Welcome back to the show. You're still watching AM Show with me, Gifty and Dopia and Roland Walker. Right now, let's turn our attention to the IMF Spring Meetings. Well, will Ghana be able to implement the entire target under the IMF program by April 2018? Well, that's the question that the IMF will try to get some answers to from the Ghana delegation as the annual IMF World Spring Meetings, which formally opens in Washington, D.C. this morning, today. Correspondent is there on the grounds. We can go live to the state and speak to him, George Rafe. Hello, George.
Hi, Gifty. How are you doing?
I'm not doing bad at all. Well, you do look good, like you're having fun there.
I wish. It's about 4 a.m. here in U.S. I've had a lot of sleep. Actually 6 days.
Well, bring us up to speed on proceedings there. We know that this meeting, is supposed to review IMF and World Bank activities, etc. And we know they've been talking about how to get the global economy to be more resilient and how to rethink development finance. Now, what has been the central theme in any of the discussions so far?
Well, let me first start with why there's the annual spring meeting. So you might call it the annual general meeting of of finance ministers and central bank cabinets around the world in countries that are members of the International Monetary Fund. So basically, it's a meeting where all these members would love to be, actually, or have to be, to ensure that how can they meet to describe or discuss issues that affect the global economy. And that is why they are meeting here in Washington, D.C. There are actually 2 meetings every year. There's a spring one, which happens somewhere in April, and there is the annual one, which happens somewhere in November. So it's all about how can they have a resilient global economy. And that is why they are meeting here to see what they can do, what they can put in place to avoid any shocks that could hit the global economy. And that is why we are having this annual IMF Spring Meetings in Washington, D.C., here in the state of America.
Right. So if you could walk us through the lineup, I mean, what has been happening? You've been there for a few days now. What has been happening and what is expected to happen before you round up on that particular meeting?
So, being here since Sunday, basically before the actual meetings that are going to start this morning, the IMF itself and the World Bank, they've been releasing several reports. The flagship report, let me say, for the IMF is the one on the global economic outlook. And when you go through the report, they actually focused a 5.8% growth rate for Ghana. Now, if you look at what the IMF is projecting, and if you look at what Ghana itself has projected for this year, now, the one that is looking at plus oil, we're looking at about over a 6% growth. Minus oil, we're looking at around a 4% growth. Now, that report actually talks about how every country is going to fare in terms of its economic growth rate. If you look at inflation, we are looking at somewhere around less over 12%, but the fund is saying that, well, we might do better than that, that is 10%. So they have actually released this flash report. And during that engagement at the press briefing, I remember I asked one of the economic directors about the fact that if you look at what is happening in Asia, the fact that the American president or U.S. president will actually hit North Korea, because of the test of some nuclear missile, and also in Syria, and the fact that what should Ghana be doing? The argument was that, well, you always have to build buffers for these eventualities.
Could you take that? Could you take that again, George? It was quite difficult to hear that final line.
I was talking about the fact that at this director of the economics at the IMF, when they launched this flagship report about the fact that what should developing countries like Ghana be doing to absorb any risk that could come with any strike by the U.S. government to hit North Korea because of the access of nuclear missiles, as well as Syria, the use of these chemical weapons, and the fact that it appears that if there is any slight instability in the Middle East, and you know this an area where they export a lot of crude oil, what should countries like Ghana be doing? And her response was that you always have to build buffers, and therefore, these times it is good to have a rational generate more revenue and diversify your economy. That is what economies like Ghana should be doing. So along these reports that have been released, there have been also bilateral meetings, side meetings that have been happening. And that is what you would obviously expect in any spring meeting or any annual World Bank meeting that actually goes on here in Washington.
Well, George, that's very interesting. So there are already predictions for Ghana, and we're looking at 5.8% growth rate.
Economic growth.
You live in this system, so you understand it better, and you follow the economic discussions better. What are the implications with this prediction? If we have to come back home and break this down to people for them to understand, we're talking about this prediction, and plus oil, we're looking at 6% growth as well. What does that mean? I mean, if we are to break it down.
When you go to the IMF's own economic outlook report, when they are forecasting a 5.8% growth for Ghana. Now, the economists will always draw two scenarios, plus oil, as in trying to factor in oil exports and production and all those things. We are looking at a little over 6% growth rate. Now, minus oil, we're looking at under 4%. If, let's say, the now that we are exporting oil, obviously, you can factor oil production into your economic growth. It means that the IMF is a little bit less moderate or too expectant about the economy expanding so much, more economic activities taking place in Ghana. So it looks like whilst you're looking at over 6% economic growth rate, the fund thinks that we'll do little under 6%, somewhere around 5.8%. And that could have implications, basically, in terms of revenue mobilization, in terms of development and all those things, because the more expansion that you have as an economy, it also sends signals to investors outside that the economy is expanding. Therefore, if I should invest in that economy, the returns might be good. So some would say that that could be the implication. It could have implications on revenue and all those things. But 6.2, 5.8, that's quite more, but that's significant in terms of if you want to do the extrapolation and also look at the fact that 5.2, 5.8, 6.2. So basically, the fund is more moderate in terms of the expansion of the economy compared to government that is a little bit more expectant of things doing very, very well.
What it then means is that we could do better.
Yes, but don't forget, these things are projections, and you could end up doing better than what they have been projected, or you could even less doing worse than what has been projected this year.
Well, what I wanted to find out again, George, is that we understand that the Vice President, as well as the former Finance Minister, Sektekwe, have been around. Have you, perchance, set your eyes on them, or what role would they be playing there? Do you have any idea?
Well, I knew that the Vice President, who was chair of the Economic Management Team, and Ken Ofori-Atta, the Finance Minister, were in London previously, just on Tuesday, and they are yet to touch down. They are basically embarking on what you might call a non-deal roadshow. Now, they are engaging institutional investors that are heavy in our bonds. We've been on the market more than 3 times issue Euro bonds. These are guys who are very active in the Ghanaian market, even in terms of our city bonds. And they want to engage them. They want to convince them that this is the new economic management team in place. This is what we want to do. And therefore, let's have that rapport. Let's have that engagement with them. Because if you cast your mind back some few weeks ago, there was an issue about the fact that the previous administration spent about 7 billion Ghana cedis and it wasn't accounted for. And these investors started pulling out their funds. And it has some serious implications on the Ghana cedi. And that was one of the major factors, reasons that caused cedi depreciation. So you want to touch base with these investors and assure them that this is what we are aimed to do, this is what we have done, and therefore, if you want to react itself, try and listen to our policies that we have in place, try and understand the policy measures behind the 2017 budget, therefore, be very tempered with your measures and all those things. And they have been in London after this roadshow, and they are yet to touch down. Maybe even if they should be in by today, they are yet to see them in terms of some of these engagements. So the advance team is already in time. Some officials of the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance are in town. But let me just run you through some of the programs that they are going to be in. There's this Ghana event that they are going to be in. They're going to have an engagement with the World Bank president and also Christine Lagarde. And that meeting with Christine Lagarde would be a very critical meeting because in your intro you spoke about the fact that are they going to extend the program or not? The Minister of Finance recently at an event in Ghana said that they are working towards implementing the program or completing the program in April 2018. But the argument here gives is that there are several targets that are supposed to be implemented under this program. And the argument from the fund is that it might be difficult to implement all these targets before April 2008. Now, if you have to speak right now, the fourth review is still going on. There are certain measures the government needs to implement before they can go to the board for that IMF cash to be approved. There's supposed to be some surveillance being done on the country and all those things. There are some structural reforms that the government is supposed to put in place to see the program completed. And the argument here, engaging sources in the fund, is that it might be difficult for Ghana unless you want to have a crash program that could have serious implications on the economy. And therefore, it will just be right for government to say that let's extend the program to December 2018. Let's complete it well. But on government side also, this program has come with a lot of restrictions. Even their pressure on government to put in place some laws and all those things.
And political implications, etc.
And when you engage with sources in government, you see, the argument is that we went into this program to build market confidence. And they believe that they are already getting that even without the fund program. Look at the recent $2.2 billion that was raised in this city. Bonds, which has become a serious issue right now in Ghana here. And the fact that they have the connections and all those things. So why should we still be on their program, which is more too restrictive and all those things? And that is why they want to quickly get out of the program. But there are implications because if the signals are not, the signals could be wrong and investors could punish us because the argument here is that maybe we want to spend so much and all those things. And that is why these engagements with investors and non-due ratio is critical. So many people will be looking out for the outcome of this meeting with the IMF Managing Director, Christine Lagarde, and even that one as well with the World Bank President, Kim as well. And also some engagement with the IFC and other critical institutional investors here in USA before this meeting actually ends.
Has there been any development on rethinking development finance? Because what we know is that there's a lot of developmental needs here for in Africa. But let's just deal with Ghana's situation. Has there been any talk, any discussion, or on the program lineup, is there any parts of the program where they'll be talking more about development finance, and how are these talks expected to go?
I mean, yes, of course, there are several engagements that are happening in sidelines of this whole IMF Spring Meeting. Then, whether development finance or not, what the fund has been preaching is about more fiscal prudence. And how do you ensure that if you raise X amount of money in terms of expenditure, you balance, in terms of revenue, you balance that with expenditure. And therefore, that is what the fund has been preaching, that no matter the innovative ways you want to look at in terms of raising finance, there's one thing that you really have to look at, that is make sure that every fund that you raise as a country, you spend a similar amount. Well, there'll be the +1 or +2, but there's nothing like prudence in terms of expenditure and all those things. That is the best way out. Yes, there are innovative ways of raising funds, there's bonds, there's all those things, but there's nothing like ensuring that even if you raise this money, it goes into projects that it can pay for itself, more capital expenditure, rather than the hand-to-mouth thing that we see in most African countries. So that's what the fund has been teaching. That is what most of these seminars that are happening on the sidelines, the social program, are talking about. That let's be more prudence with our expenditure. Let's make sure that whatever amount we raise in terms of revenue is balanced in terms of expenditure, so we can avoid issues about rising debts and also unsustainable debts and risk.
Okay. Thank you very much, George Rafe. George Rafe is assistant editor with Joy Business here, and he is at the Spring Meetings in Washington, D.C., bringing us up to speed on what's happening. Very interesting conversation. And if you do love economics, then you would love the conversation even more and have a better understanding. But we'll be keeping tabs with him every now and then to bring you updates on what's happening, especially Ghana's what concerns Ghana. Of course, we understand that the vice president is leading a delegation there. We'll get to know what they're meeting with, the outcome of their meeting with Christian Lagarde much later.